So welcome to the State of Greater Than Games. How many of you have never been to a State of Greater Than Games panel before?
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
Yes,
amazing.
we've weeded out those who have come to these panels before and gone, let's stop doing that.
Yeah.
It's a silly panel.
Right. That's actually very impressive to me. I'm kind of surprised by that.
Right.
So what we do in this panel is just ramble on for a little while and then answer your questions, where we continue to ramble on after you've asked questions. So that's basically how this goes. So the summary is we're going to talk about what has happened in the last year with Greater Than Games and what's kind of coming up, and then take questions and answer things. Andy has about 6 hours worth of questions prepared. So we're going to be relaxed.
He's got his legal pen.
He's got his pen.
Oh, no.
He's ready.
That's more intimidating. He said, that's not true. I have exactly one question prepared. It's like oh, no.
But it's in 16 parts. It's essay form. Yeah.
So I was in a panel yesterday where Andy was, and I think you only asked 40 to 50% of the questions in that panel.
It wasn't that high. I let other people have a chance.
It's pretty fine. So the first thing that I want to say is I'm really glad to be having a State of Greater Than Games panel where I don't have to answer questions about Oblivion fulfillment.
I have a question.
What's your question, Christopher?
What lessons did you learn from Oblivion?
You don't have to answer
All the lessons.
So many lessons. We learned a lot of lessons from Oblivion Fulfillment. So Oblivion Fulfillment wound up, I don't know if you've noticed, on our recent Kickstarters, post-Oblivion, we've had a very extensive section about shipping,
Oh, yeah.
where we talk about shipping a lot.
Did anybody hear back the
So we've been homebrewers, Jagged Earth.
Spirit Island, Jagged Earth, or the Sinnoh Comics role-playing game Kickstarter, any one of those three? Did any of you read any or all of the shipping section? Anybody here who say, yeah, I read the whole shipping section for sure? Nat, did you?
Yes.
Okay.
So that came out of many lessons learned about the Oblivion ship out and how to. So we wound up, like, to be honest, like, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of an extra $100,000 that we spent shipping Oblivion that we didn't budget for.
Yep.
And so we were fortunately able to cover that because of
Sales.
revenue coming in our business, and it worked, and we're a big enough company that we could absorb that. But you can imagine how easy it would be for a smaller company to accidentally drive themselves into the ground and go bankrupt.
Yeah. If
Like,
we didn't have
calculating
products
shipping
before that, if
Right.
we had been lucky and Oblivion was our first Kickstarter ever, we're like, oh wow, all this stuff, we did all these
Yeah.
things, and then there was an extra unbudgeted $100,000.
Right.
That's it.
Right, and the real reason why that happened for us is because between the time we ran that Kickstarter and the time that we fulfilled it, the various shipping companies we used changed how they calculated weight. So they made it really disadvantageous to ship a large volume of air, which unfortunately was the entire freaking point of that Kickstarter. So
Because there's a big collector's case, which is not that heavy, but it is that big.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
they went to volumetric shippings where you're charged by if it's small and very heavy, you're charged by weight.
Yeah.
But if it's large and not very heavy, it's like, well, listen, a box this big, bare minimum,
Yeah.
it's going to be this. Like, okay, great.
Keep it
yeah, so that was the lesson learned from that. So we fulfilled the Oblivion Kickstarter right after Gen Con last year. We were in the middle of it at Gen Con last year. We finished by like October, got everything out. So that is the first thing we did in the last year. Then we also ran a Kickstarter for Spirit Island Jagged Earth, which went very, very well. And we ran a Kickstarter for Sentinel Comics, the role-playing game, which went very, very well, and a Kickstarter for homebrewers. And so we had three things, and now we have already fulfilled the homebrewers Kickstarter. We fulfilled that immediately before coming to Gen Con, had homebrewers on sale at Gen Con, and it is sold out. So we are really excited about that. So we've got more. It'll be on our web store and in distribution, of course, but we're really excited about the reception of that. And our other new release is Medium, which is a party game that we released here at Gen Con, and also sold out of by like 11 in the morning yesterday. And we brought a really large amount and sold out. And that was one of the first games in a while that we've done without going to Kickstarter. And so that's kind of a model that we'll do going forward for some games, especially cheaper ones, but we won't stop doing Kickstarter entirely for the foreseeable future to preempt that question that Andy was trying to ask. So that is the rough arc of what we did in the last year. And looking forward to the next year, we have a few definitely public things that we have put out there that are coming up. So I've been doing monthly updates about some of these things. On the Greater Than Games forum, I do a monthly State of Greater Than Games kind of post So I kind of say the status of things and some updates. So it's a little mini version of this panel in post forum on Greater Than Games forum if you're not on there and want to go check it out. But one of the things that we have that we're working on a bunch is obviously Legends of Sleepy Hollow. So that game was on Kickstarter. We're working on that. We're obviously working on the Sentinel Comics role-playing game, which was on Kickstarter, and we're working on, and again, Spirit Island Jagged Earth. So all of those are in the works. Yeah.
So Comics role-playing game has numerous products, and so some of it will be fulfilled in the very near future, and some of it will be fulfilled not
In the very
in
distant. Yeah.
Well, not the very distant, but the fairly distant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on, and then there's other things a little bit farther out that have not been on Kickstarter that we still have in the works publicly. One of which is Prime War, which we've been talking about for many years. For those of you who've been coming to these panels or otherwise following us for many years, which is a tactical game set in the world of Sentinel Comics, and then we've got a bunch of other kind of exciting things in the works. So that is my quick update. Do any of the rest of you have update things you wanted to say before we start taking questions? No. Oh my.
That's like a big part to me.
In the last year,
So-
we also
Yeah, I said, did you talk about cheap ass games? So in May of this year, we mentioned that, or we announced that we acquired the publishing rights to Cheap Ass Games, which is if you don't know, it's an older game company started in the early 90s. So I think it's a slightly younger than me, actually. So like 25-ish, 24. years
Yeah,
old.
basically.
So-
This is something I'm really excited about, and I can't believe that it was on my notes. Like the thing that I need to talk about is I'm going to go through this arc and then talk about the Cheap Ass Games acquisition, and then you had to remind me. So thank you. You're hired. All right. So Cheap Ass Games was a small but very well regarded, real game company that's been around as long as Meg's been alive. Like you said, that's just basically true. They started out. There's a couple. James Ernest and his wife Carol started this company in the 90s, and they started out selling games that were black and white, just in little packs, and didn't have any components beyond cardboard.
Yeah.
So you'd have to get your own dice, get your own pawns, that kind of thing.
they were called cheap ass games because they had they're just like here's a
Almost
rule.
told you exactly what you needed to play there.
Exactly. How many of you are familiar with any of those kind of games, those kind of
Yeah,
products?
excellent.
Yeah, they've been around for a while. So they approached us about a year ago, and it was like tentatively behind the scenes in the works last year at Gen Con, and then it took kind of a while to get going. But we're like, hey, we kind of want to semi-retire. Like we want to keep designing games, but we want to sell you our publishing rights, and then keep designing games, and then maybe you keep publishing them, but we don't want to run this as a publishing company anymore. Right. So that's what happened. And then we were very excited about it because they're a very well-regarded company. They've got a few games that sell very consistent evergreens. The two for them that are kind of their best sellers are Kill Dr. Lucky, which is like reverse Clue, if that makes sense. So you're all going around a mansion trying to kill Dr. Lucky, but not let other people see you. It's very fun. And then there's a game called TAC, which is an abstract strategy game, kind of like chess, but an abstract strategy game. It is a lot of fun, and it is based on some novels. How many of you are familiar with The Name of the Wind, Patrick Rothfuss novels? So TAC is an artifact from that universe that James Ernest designed, and so it's in there. But we're going to be working and taking some of those black and white games from their back catalog and updating them to be full color and have all the components in them, like be modern games, and then also working on other games from that James Ernest Design Studio, effectively. So then we'll have James Ernest Design Studio as well as Dice Hate Me Design Studios and things like that, where we all get Greater Than Games games. There, how about that? That's what you guys get. What else do we need to talk about before we take questions?
Do we forget anything else?
Are you guys all looking at me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Maggie,
I think you
Maggie,
got
what
it.
else?
I think
What else did Paul forget?
Thanks, Maggie.
I think, yeah, gotcha.
All right.
Jen, what else did we forget?
What did I? Oh, jeez.
No, that's good.
Did I forget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Don't invoke
did you
it.
remember
How's
one?
Trogdor selling?
Great. Trogdor is selling very well. That is not a game that is like our game.
Right, but James Ernest helped.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting question. Anticipate a question that you're asking. So how many of you are familiar with Homestar Runner or Trogdor the Burninator?
Yeah, that's right.
The Burninator. Okay, so
Educate yourselves.
if you're not, go search Trogdor the Burninator on Google and watch the video that comes
Just
up.
go to homestarrunner.com and go to Strong Bad Emails and watch Strong Bad Email number 1, and then continue on down the line forever.
They have a playlist on YouTube now. You can watch them all.
Yeah, this was like YouTube before YouTube. I was gonna say, skip this step.
You don't get to click on the little things.
They show them.
But no,
It's not
there's no work. There's no work.
You're not
Kids these days and their YouTubes.
So this was a game. Anyway, they decided that they wanted to make a board game, and it's a co-op game where you have to burninate both the countryside and the peasants.
And the cottages.
And the thatch roof cottages.
And the cottages, very
Yeah.
important.
And so they worked with James Ernest, also from Cheap Ass Games, to like make it a kind of good game, and Christopher consulted on it a bit. And then they published this game, and they did not know if they had any fans left or anyone liked their stuff. And then they ran a Kickstarter and made $1.5 million for 26,000 people. They're like, oh, I guess. Well, that was all of them though. No one else wants it. That was all the people that like us.
And so then we were talking to them this spring, just like because we were friends with them as part of me helping out with the design stuff. And they were like, okay, we think we should have this game at Gen Con. And we're like, well, it's too late. You cannot get a Gen Con booth. There are no Gen Con booths left.
But we got them space in our booth, and we're like, guys, you're really popular. People like your stuff. There's way more people than that. People are going to want to buy them. And it's true. And so they're slowly getting there. So we're going to be working with them to kind of get that game, keep it in print, and do other games like that.
Yeah,
so.
because they're already going to be out.
Yeah.
So after
But
this
it's
show,
something
they'll be
super
sold out of the pre-run. So,
Yeah, which is really, really cool. So
Yep.
we're excited to keep working with them.
So it's selling very well.
That's good. I mean,
Data.
I didn't play, I didn't back the Kickstarter, but I did place somebody's copy who did.
Yeah.
And then I had to pick up the copy.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a lot of
awesome.
fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, now I'd open it to more questions. Who's got questions?
You guys had any additional staff come on?
Yes.
Yes.
That is a really, really good question. So, our
In the last
in the last 12 months, we hired Ruby in the warehouse
She
in
drives forklifts.
December, right? And so she's very good at driving forklifts. So she's a new full-time employee in the warehouse.
And you might have seen her in the booth or in our room already. She's got very beautiful purple hair right now.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
then
good.
we hired Katie in the spring, in January.
Yeah.
And Katie is taken on managing customer service and just taking that over. And that includes now for Gen Con doing the scheduling and math and everything like that for citizens. So she reports to Maggie and is in part of Maggie's marketing department because all customer service and all that kind of stuff is there. So that's been really excellent. So I think
This
really
year has been
leveled
our
up.
This year has been our best year in terms of
Yeah.
customer service.
Yeah.
Because Katie is like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and getting that stuff organized and having stuff. So that's been very good question. So those are the.
We don't have anybody else.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
My sister's been doing
Yeah.
work for
I mean,
So-
like,
Right. So the other thing to say, like the follow up to that, right, is
But that's
that.
I'm 18.
So Daryl Lauder. How many of you have met Daryl Lauder before? He's sitting right there next to Christopher.
I'm
Just
very
introduce
sorry.
everybody since that hasn't happened yet.
Oh.
I've been to one of these before. It didn't scare me away.
So this is Paul Bender. He's the CEO of Greater Than Games.
Jeremy Handel, I run Handelabra Games. We make digital tabletop stuff.
Maggie Clayton, marketing director for Greater Than Games. I also thought Paul had probably already done that. I make the assumption that happens at the beginning of a panel. Pass it on.
It was like the Christ, like you've got the cold open,
Yeah.
and then you do.
We
It's
did-
like, honestly,
we
it's
started
probably because I was
the
late, right? It was
Right,
because I was
yeah.
4 minutes late. That's what delayed it all the
Right.
time.
I'm Adam Robertaro. I am the Lord of Illustrations by official title.
It's true.
That's tight.
Christopher and Adam.
Yeah,
you said it.
I
got
handle a lot of the art assets and working on what those are going to be.
I'm Christopher Bedell. I am the editor-in-chief of Greater Than Games. It means a lot of things. Don't worry about it.
Chris Kirkman, official title game development director, but probably just want to change that to that guy from now on, just on my business cards anyway. But I also run Dissecting Studio, the portion of that, but do a lot of different things.
A lot of things.
A lot of things. We wear a lot of hats.
Yes.
I'm Daryl Lauder. I'm figuring it out.
Yep. Yep.
Jennifer Clausen, I'm the creative director for Creative Games.
Yes.
So to answer your question, so Daryl though, so Daryl has been doing graphic design as a contractor for Greater Than Games for many years.
And game design.
Daryl also designed Compounded and co-designed Bottom of the Ninth and Fate of the Elder Gods. And Daryl also has been doing some like consulting contractor assistance with me with some sales stuff and with some other graphic design stuff, and there's a whole bunch of other things. So Daryl has recently gone from a part-time contractor to a full-time contractor in the last few months. So been working on stuff. And then there's Trevor who's back there. Trevor had a similar situation, if you remember. Trevor was a part-time contractor and then a full-time contractor. And he does all the filming things.
Yeah. He's our AV person.
So that's who's Trevor, who we didn't introduce either. So Trevor is our AV guy. He records all of the things. He produces the Letters Page podcast that Christopher and Adam do. Anything related to A and or V
Yeah.
goes through Trevor.
Only those two
Like Virginia, for instance.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Alaska and Virginia.
Or Argentina.
Argentina.
All right. Now we have introduced everyone. That was a very good question. Now we will go to the Q&A portion.
So when you guys were developing Spirit Island, which I love by the way, awesome game, did the mechanics come first, or the theme, or did they come together at the same time?
So that was the thing that came from Eric Royce, the main designer, and when I met him at Origins 2012, and I met him and somebody had introduced us because he was working on this cooperative game, and I had just released it, and it was a multiverse cooperative game, and they're like, you two should meet. And he had this idea for the thematics of like, okay, there's invaders, and there's this island, and there's spirits, and at that point he had the idea for the thematics, and he also had the modular game tile boards for the board, but they were shaped very differently, and then a bunch of other ideas. And over the course of the next year or two after that, he and I went back and forth a bunch, just working on this game together because I was really jazzed about it, and he had a really cool set of ideas, and we made all kinds of changes, and it's definitely like still his game, but it was part of the developmental process from then on. And then I think it was in 2014 that he, at some point, it's either 2013 or 2014, but I think it was in 2014. It's a long time ago. I'm very old. In 2014, he said, "Hey, I think that this game is at a point where I want to start shopping it around to publishers." And I said, "Oh yeah, great."
It was initially 2013.
That was in 2013. Yeah. Okay.
We got the contract signed.
Okay. It was
at the beginning of 2014, but
okay, that's what it is. Thank you. And so he's like, "I want to shop around to publishers," and I said, "Great." At that point, we'd only ever published like our own stuff, and I was like, "Well, great." So you could talk to these people or those people. I had a bunch of suggestions, and he goes, "Well, no, you guys have been working on this game. I want you to publish it." And we're like, "Oh, we've never done that before." So that was the first game that we ever signed before we did any other games with any other people, and then it was we made it like so long.
Things came out before that.
After
like,
other
yeah,
games.
we signed that game before we merged with Dice Hate Me, which is like a very long time ago as well.
2015, to be
Right.
exact.
Yeah. Right. So 2015 was when we did the Kickstarter for Spirit Island.
Yep, and then it released in 2017.
Oh, man.
So anyway, so so a lot of the thematics came first. Some of the mechanics were part of that, and a lot of the other mechanics evolved from that story. And then we were going to fast forward a bunch, and it came out, and it was amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, thematics first definitely is the answer. This is a very short answer to your question.
I like long games.
Yeah. Question.
Could you maybe give some possible 1 year, 2 year, 5 year goals, or things you're having in mind?
So
Short and long?
yeah, like we could some, but there's also a lot of secret stuff that we're not going to talk about.
Understandable, but just kind of some general things, both short and long.
So in general, something that I've been saying a lot when some purchasers from various wholesalers have asked me that at this show, because that's what I do at the shows, I have meetings with them, is basically when I look at our catalog of games that we publish, I want to have a very diverse, well-curated selection of super fun stuff, right? So I want to have big games like Spirit Island, and midweight games like Bottom of the Ninth and Compounded and Homebrewers, etc. And then lighter party games, stuff in the more mass appeal games like Medium, which is our first one there, and we want to have more stuff there as well. We also want to have tabletop role-playing games, which our first one is going to come out soon. We did the Kickstarter for it. So that's the overarching thing. Yeah.
I would also add that Medium kind of fits into that family market too, so that's an area that we're looking to go into.
In terms of,
I think our immediate goal right now is get the RPG out.
yeah, that is one of them.
that's-
We have many media goals.
Yes.
We're also another media goal is the Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, really, obviously, everything that we've already kickstarted,
Right.
that's the immediate goals,
Right.
right?
There's also Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Spirit Island, and then
Yeah.
the RPG core rulebook, but then there's also several other products that were part of that Kickstarter.
Yeah, the 1 year is getting out the things that you know about already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a few other in the midweight tier. There's a couple of midweight games that we have not kickstarted yet. That as soon as we get a couple more projects fulfilled, and they're just about on the cusp of being ready to do so. The two that we've mentioned before, one is Milkman, and another one is Curators, and those are both going to be like that midweight Dice Hate Me Studio branded Americana Euro-esque game kind of games. So those ones I think we've talked about before, and they're there. And then there's also Prime War, which is one of those big heavier weight games in the Sentinel Comics kind of universe. So those are things we've announced before. So those are more like midterm goals, or defined as midterm goals, or midterm projects. And then there's a number of video game things as well, because we've expanded that in terms of working with partners for video games. So Jeremy Handel here from Handel Opera Games could discuss some of his
Sure. So,
public goals.
yeah, so we'll start from the beginning. Sentinels of the Multiverse is just about done, if you can believe that. It's still waiting on challenge modes, but other than that, it's essentially done. Finally, Oblivion shipped almost 6 months ago at this point, and it is still doing great. But despite it being done in terms of content complete, it is not over. There's still a number of things that were mentioned during the Season 2 Kickstarter way back when that we are still hoping to, fingers crossed, maybe do. Things like a story mode is something that we still get regularly asked about, and so we're internally looking at ways that we could potentially make that happen. And there's also a really good chance that you'll be seeing some Sentinels of Earth Prime digital at some point in the future. Not until it exists on the tabletop, though. So that is definitely a thing. Other than that, Bottom of the Ninth is still a thing that is still out there that you can play. It actually just recently had a price drop to $2.99. It was $4.99. So if you haven't bought it, it's never been a better time. Then we sort of went away for a little while, out of the family, but close friends. We worked on One Deck Dungeon with Asmadi Games. We just recently launched into early access Aeon's End with Indie Boards and Cards. If you like Sentinels, I highly recommend it. It feels very similar in terms of play and mechanics, obviously very different thematically, but a lot of people say it sort of scratches that same itch as Sentinels Multiverse Co-op, many versus one, etc. And of course, the next thing, which is the real reason why you asked this question, is that we have officially broken ground on the digital version of Spirit Island as of this week. We've been doing the prelim work for it for the last 6 to 8 months, and now it's really ready to just dive in. With the Aeon's End sort of wrapping up and getting close to be at retail, our basic, our 90% of our time project for the next probably 6 to 8 months at least is going to be Spirit Island. We do not have anywhere approaching a release date yet.
Jeremy and I finished the contract on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So Q4
Like
2019.
literally Tuesday.
But stay tuned for information on a Kickstarter for it in relatively short order.
What engine are you using?
Sorry?
What engine?
Unity. Yeah, we do almost everything on Unity just because it makes it so much easier. We know that the first thing that we're going to do is release it to Steam because for a Kickstarter that's the easiest for us to fulfill. And then we use Unity so that because we know there's so many people out there who love these games on their tablets and even their phones. Sometimes the phone version takes a little while because we always like to rework the UI to make sure it really fits on the phone. It's not just a shrunk down version, but the tablet version will definitely be part and parcel in some of this discussion as well. I think that's about it on the digital stuff that we can talk about.
Yeah.
I can talk about some more digital stuff.
Yeah.
Because we also we're working with Underbite Games on a video game called The Sentinels of Freedom. It is in the same world and timeline as the RPG, the Sentinel Comics role-playing game that's coming out. It is not, it's a new thing for us in that it is not a board game or a tabletop game in any way that has been converted over into a video game. It is its own game. It's just a video game. There's not going to be a tabletop version of Sentinels of Freedom video game. It's a video game that is its own thing. And that has been fun and thrilling and a lot of work that we didn't really know how to expect because we've never done a video game before. They have, as we're working with people that know what they're doing. But at the same time, they've never worked with us before.
But that's actually playable now right next to our booth. The
Yep.
same booth as
Yep.
Jeremy's.
Yeah,
And
so
we have
also-
all GTG digital, kind of all our digital partners kind of hanging out.
So
Play,
you
play
played
the
the demo.
tutorial level and do the character creator, which is pretty rad.
Yep.
So
And then also we
Yeah.
have been working with
Yeah, Campfire. So
Yeah.
there's another company called Campfire Studio, also in that booth. So they released this winter a digital version of Viva Java Dice. How many of you have played our game Viva Java Dice?
Is it a
You should.
is it digital version of Viva Java Dice?
No, Viva Java Dice.
Okay, okay.
It's a digital version of Viva Java Dice.
Okay.
There's an app of it now too, and it's really, really cool. Like, so it's a game about you're making different blends of coffee, and it's a dice rolling game. But the whole app is amazing. It's like you're in a coffee shop, and there's a little coffee grinder, and the beans come out of the coffee grinder, and you're making little matches of things. It is incredibly fun. So if you've never played Viva Java, the full dice, the actual board game, go check out the app. It's in that booth also. You can see kind of how it plays. It's really fun. And then also maybe want to buy the game.
Talk about fate.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is, yes.
So the other
RPG? Do you mean the other?
Yeah.
the other digital version of one of our games that Campfire is working on is Not me?
Keep going. No, you keep going.
We get there, yeah.
What's going on? Paul, okay. Well, what's going on? Anyway, Fate of the Elder Gods. So they are adapting the game that Daryl Lauder and I worked on with Richard Lanius and released 2 years?
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's been 2 years already.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're using sort of the core of our system as far as spell casting and raising summoning points to basically raise your Elder God from the.
Well, has anyone here
the
played
round
Fate
rounds.
of the Elder Gods?
Okay,
Yeah.
So the whole point, yes, Lovecraft theme, but the whole point, the flip for those that haven't played it, is you're playing from the cultist end. So as opposed to trying to save the world, you're trying to blow it the F up. So you're trying to raise your god to kind of destroy all of mankind. And all players are playing their own cult, so they're all worshiping their own different elder gods. So you're all at odds trying to make sure that your elder god's the best one, so that's the one that should be risen. So there you go.
Yeah, and the difference between what they're doing digitally and what we did with the board game is that it's now more of a stealth-based video game. So you're actually controlling an acolyte, a cult leader that is going around, sneaking around. There are no hit points, nothing to keep track of except for your spells, the things you're collecting. And if you're caught, you're dead.
But
And
it is
then-
a complete video game, like, because it's like inspired by the board game, but it's its own.
Yes.
thing.
It's its
Yeah.
way own
It's
thing.
its own
Yeah.
It's like
World
Sentinels of
building.
Freedom more than it is
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Sentinels of Multiverse.
It
That
has
makes
bits
sense.
and pieces of the board game and the actual realm that we built around the board game itself, but it's very much its own thing.
Yeah, it's heavily inspired by the game, but it does things that you could never do on a board game. Like
Right.
it's a little bit of a other people can play against each other online. You're recruiting other cultists to join your cult and things like that.
Yeah, so go check it out. Also in that booth, they have a whole vertical slice through with it, and they're going to do
They
a
have a-
Kickstarter later this year.
And they have a playable demo, right?
Yeah, they do. They
have
got
a
a-
playable
they've
demo
got
of
a-
it.
No.
Oh,
They
they
have
have
a
a
trailer.
There's
Yeah.
a trailer.
They have a vertical slice. They have a trailer.
Yeah.
Okay.
The internet in the booth is not
They did
reliable
have
enough
them.
for them to
Oh,
have the
wow.
playable
Yeah.
demo.
Right.
They originally were going to, yeah.
Yeah, they made a demo for the show, and then it was not.
And then
not
It
doable.
required the
convention
internet.
internet
Yeah.
defeated them.
Right.
You're running it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So good question. Yes.
I'm wondering, I believe it was last year's Greater Than game, you mentioned that the citizens, like Citizen Dawn and her group would be getting a separate book. Like they wouldn't be part of the core rules, they wouldn't be part of that, they'd be their own thing. Is there any idea where that is in the timeline of things?
Yes.
Or is that hush hush?
We know exactly where.
Yeah, we know where it is. And the stories about it. We know what Citizen Dawn is doing, and we know what the citizens of the Sun are doing.
All that.
And you're not going to share it?
No, 0%.
We answered your question.
That is a thing that is coming down the line. So.
You have to fulfill that entire RPG Kickstarter.
Right.
Before
That is
you
a
learn.
thing that will happen after we've done all the things that are currently. But between now and then, there might be hints as to what's going on, but I can't really say anything.
That probably wouldn't.
No.
That's unlikely.
Right.
Excuse me. You mentioned growth into various types of game markets.
Yeah.
One of those you mentioned was RPG.
Mhm.
Are you looking at making more games with the Sentinel's Gyro system or in unique systems?
So-
And is it Gyros or
Well,
Gyro?
so
We usually say gyro.
Adam usually says gyro, but the word gyro could be pronounced gyro, and it is a super Euro game. Anyway,
So that's very nascent.
Right. Well, so that's the thing is like the gyro system is a thing that is developed and part of Critical Hit Studios, who we worked with on the game. And so, if we wanted to do something with them in the long run with the system, we could. But we have plenty on our plate right now. We want to really have the system be focused on the Sentinel Comics role playing game for now, and see what happens in the future. That said, there are other RPG things that we are fixing to think about working on as well.
It's very, very vague. So basically,
Right.
like, I want to see how the Sentinel Comics role-playing game does in the market. How does it sell? What lessons do we learn there? We've already learned a bunch of lessons about how long it takes to lay out and edit a 600-page book. So that's very informative. So we're going to keep learning lessons, and then we're going to start selling it and learn some more lessons. And it is something that, like, I have vague ambitions to do other RPG stuff in the future, but really, we're only going to do it if it makes financial sense, and we don't even know if it does. So we're going to publish Sentinel Comics, a role-playing game, and then continue to think about the possibility of considering doing other tabletop RPGs, and that's really all that we are. Now, what I would say specifically about your question about the rules is, it is my I would say, fairly strong preference to have the mechanics and engine of an RPG system specifically designed and tooled for the setting and type of game that we're making. So the Gyro Euro Hero system is that for the cinematic arcs of comic book stories, right? That's what it's made for, that's where it came out of. And so if we did some wildly theoretical other, like if we did the Viva Java role-playing game about how you're running a coffee shop, you would want it to feel like you're running a coffee shop and then design a different system based on that. Does that make sense?
TC's going to work on that.
Great. Yeah, perfect.
So with that in mind, given the arc of where we are with the Cinema Comics role-playing game, we will probably have more definite opinions formed by this time next year,
Right.
once we've had an RPG in the market for a while.
Yeah.
Having learned lessons about layout and stuff, what sort of timeline do you expect for the rest of the Sentinel role-playing game? Stuff that has been kickstarted.
Right. So the core rulebook is coming soon. Everything else, besides that, some things are pretty quick and easy. Like the GM kit and the dice set will be at the same time as the core rulebook, and things like the coloring book are pretty quick. But then there are some things. Like the bigger books, like the Guys book, the Dark Watch book, the Urban Settings book, and the 2 Adventures in 1 book. Those are all like. We are the set of people working on those, and we're also working with some outside contractors, and the History of Cinema Comics book. But with that in mind, like we can pretty much put only one of those through the pipeline at a time. So none of those are all being written in parallel, but when the final finishing steps are ours. So I would be surprised if all of those things were fully fulfilled even by Gen Con 2021.
Yeah.
But we are working through them quickly, and once like I said, by this time next year, we're going to have a much better idea of how those things are going, because we have a lot of processes in place that we've never had to make before.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of the process, but then again, at the end of the whole arc of doing that core rulebook, we keep looking at it and are going to keep more looking at it and be like, all right, here's some stuff we did wrong that we should do better for these other books that will make them move more efficiently. So Jen and I have been talking about that a lot too, and Christopher and I have been talking about that a bunch.
Not in ways saying that the core rulebook is going to have a bunch of things wrong with it, but the way that we got to that final point is going to be wrong. Because right now, chapters 2 and 3 are in a really good, almost final state, but it took so much nonsense to get there, and we learned a lot from that.
Yeah, and we want to have to not duplicating work and making sure there aren't errors without duplicating work. The lovely thing about doing the Sentinel Comics role-playing game, is that we're the licensee, right? It's our IP. So a lot of times, what you'll have, if you've got RPGs that are based on a license that's external, you've got a hard and fast deadline of when it must come out or you lose the license, right? And so then that's how you get books published with a lot of errors in them. And that's happened for games that I think this game's really cool. Man, this book is poorly laid out and has a lot of errors, right? And so we're not going to do that. So we're kind of going along on the process. So, but it's coming along very nicely.
I would say just keep an eye on updates.
Yeah.
Yep.
As always, we'll keep you apprised of where we're at, how we're doing.
Yeah, it is always our goal to be as absolutely transparent as possible on Kickstarter updates. We do this. We started 2 years ago, implemented doing monthly updates on things. And if anything ever changes about a project or we learn other information, we'll put it out there as soon as we know it. So, yeah.
Okay, so Carla and I were chatting, and we were thinking, what's the right way to ask this question to get what we're really interested in, and not ask things that you guys don't want to talk about. And it's about you've talked, I think, publicly about getting a new space, right?
Oh, a new physical space.
Yeah,
moving to our new offices.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't expect you to tell us well, it's exactly this day or whatever, but what's the process of trying to get a new space?
I knew it. He has one question.
Yeah. Okay. So, Andy, this is such an Andy question. That's good. So, the process is imagine that you needed to have a lot of dental surgery, but for some reason you couldn't give you general anesthesia. They had to do all local anesthesia, but it's kind of just okay local anesthesia. And the surgery is going to be real long. It's going to be an 8 to 12 hour surgery. So you're going to have to be injected with Novocaine multiple times throughout the surgery while they're in your mouth working on extracting some teeth and repairing some stuff.
But they're taking teeth out and putting teeth in?
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff.
Right, that's right. So I think that might give you a picture of what the process is.
What it feels like.
Yeah.
So
That's
we
really
we've
that
been wor-
captures the essence.
We've been working on this for actually a while now, and we have a couple of prospects that are very good, but nothing that is like super definite. We're for sure doing this thing, but our tentative goal is to be moving into a new physical space shortly after Gen Con next year.
Yeah.
But in order to make that happen, we have a bunch of things that have to.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm not keeping things secret from you. Like, this is literally true. So, like, first of all, I was going to say it was like pulling teeth, but I wanted to make it clear that it is worse than that. It's like also reinserting teeth over a long period of time. So that's the first thing that's going on. The second, true facts, though, are that we currently are in a space that we have outgrown.
Yeah.
And particularly in the warehouse, although on the office side as well, to an extent. And we have 2 auxiliary warehouses that also have a lot of things in them and are largely full. And so we're moving stuff, and all in St. Louis, right? We're moving stuff among those 3 spaces as necessary to make it work. And honestly, Matt and Jody and the whole rest of the warehouse team have done an astonishingly good job of dealing with the insufficient space. So, and the fact that I haven't gotten them more. So that's been really good, but it's not sustainable in the long run. We must have more space. The other thing that is a true fact is that our lease on our current main space is up at the end of 2020. So
shortly after
we
Gen
gotta
Con
have
next
that
year.
solved, right? But one way or another. So
let me tell you just quick, like, because I was there 2 weeks ago, and Paul told me this great story because I'm walking through the warehouse and I haven't been there in like 2 years.
Yeah, at least.
And so walk through, it's very organized but very packed, and so packed in fact that they misplaced a forklift in there. And I don't mean like a pallet jack, I mean a forklift.
Actual forklift.
And yeah, so that
there was a
Paul's
missing
thing, like,
forklift for half an hour at one point. And everybody was like, where'd that forklift go? No one stole the forklift. That's impossible, right? Like, that can't have happened. So
that's how overpacked that whole place is. But again, it's organized. It's not like, it's not like a Sam's Club exploded or something.
Matt knows where everything is.
Yeah.
Well, and
Except
beyond,
the
forklift,
forklift.
and beyond Matt knowing where everything is, the computer system knows where everything is. Matt has worked on a ton of work to make sure that everything is inventoried with barcodes and stuff. So you can ask the computer, "Hey, where is this?" and it will tell you, and it's accurate. So that's it's not just a one, because it used to be
behind that pallet, around that corner, through that tiny little aisle.
right. But it used to be that there was like some of us know where thing is you have to find, whenever you want to find a thing in the warehouse, you have to find the right person who knows where that thing is, which isn't, there's not one person that had all that knowledge, and then they have to like go on a quest. But now that information is just available.
Yeah.
So
Something that we've been working through a lot and are in the middle of, like, to come into a middle where by no means that good at it, is getting it so that as we grow, we share information among the people that need to know it, and that no one keeps secret information in their brain. And Christopher and Adam can keep secret information about Sentinel Comics in their brain. They're a lot. But
A little.
a lot.
Something that I am working on overcoming is keeping secret information in my brain. I don't want to, but I do it by accident sometimes. And the first thing that we really got working well here, and this is really only in the last 2 year process, where we've really, by now, as of like 6 to 9 months ago, gotten it to the point where I was like, it is good, is the warehouse, where there isn't secret warehouse information anymore, right? Like, definitely all of the people that need to know where something is know where it is, and anyone else can figure out where it is, and you'll ask this person, like, yep, it's over here, this is figure outable, like, it's all like correct and good, right? And so now what we're working on doing is getting the game development and production pipeline to that point, getting the marketing and sales stuff to that point, getting everything else there, right? And so it's an ongoing process, for sure. Yeah, is that good? Good answers?
Can I answer your question about the building?
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
We went the long way around.
Yeah.
Right back here.
How many actual comic books are you planning on making?
Well, so comic books are a thing that we would love to have. And when I say we, I'm going to right now talk a little bit for me and Adam, rather than the entire entity of Greater Than Games.
Yeah.
Adam and I would love to have comic books of Sentinel Comics. We wrote all of the Sentinels of the Multiverse and Sentinel Comics stuff in the future, in the past, with the idea that like these things are all based on comics that don't exist, and that those comics could exist hypothetically. And a lot of the letters page stuff we've done has been around the idea of, man, we could make those comics, but the time that we would spend making those comics, as you probably know, Marvel and DC have gone bankrupt numerous times, is not as worthwhile as time we spend making the games that we work on for us as a company. And so whereas we'd love to have comics, it's tricky to get into that. That said, it's not impossible that we could eventually someday somehow do comics, but right now there are other things that are more pressing priorities, and we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah.
But anything that I would say would be speculation.
Yeah, I would be really, really shocked. Like, it's not going to happen. Greater Than Games is not going to, as Greater Than Games, become an indie comic book publisher.
That is
We're just
that
not
is a
set
very
up to
true
do
statement.
that. We're not.
But that
So-
doesn't mean that there isn't a possible way to make
Yeah,
sense.
if there's a way to make it happen, we'll make it happen.
Yes.
But it won't be by turning into an indie comic book publisher. It'll be some other way.
Right.
So does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that we don't want comics.
Yeah, it's something that both of us really
Desperately
really
want. But that's yeah.
So like if through force of will, comics could come into existence.
Yeah,
We
would have them.
We'll manifest them.
Just
Yeah.
sheer force.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot.
Between us, there was
Yeah.
great force. So.
Yeah.
I actually have a three-part question, but I think it'll be fairly simple.
I'm gonna call you
that
Andy
have
too
been- 3 games that have been hinted at various points and haven't appeared, so I just kind of wanted to see if they were still in the pipeline. The Fate of the Elder Gods expansion, the Investigators expansion.
Well, let's address that one.
Yeah.
It is, well, as much as we consider, probably about 95% done. We're just trying to figure out what we want to exactly do with it. We've talked about several different methods that we'd want to do with Fate. As of right now, originally planned was to do a
Yeah.
Kickstarter, a standalone Kickstarter that could also let people reinvest in the base game of Fate and possibly do a second printing of the game itself. But we're still we're noodling the ideas, the different ideas on how to handle that product to give it the best life that it can have. The fans have been very receptive, but we'd like to be able to capture new fans and have a bigger base for this as well. But the game itself is there. We're happy with the expansion. It's really cool. We love it. We just need to spend maybe 2 days with Richard, making sure everything is locked down tight, and we've got one piece of art we're still waiting on. Right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I need to go corner him.
Yeah, you do.
Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have more information about that soon. We just want to take the time to get past our production queue right now and to figure out exactly the best way that we can approach that product and that game, that we can make it to have it have the best reach.
Yeah.
And that's something we've been talking about ideas
and
about.
we're in the same situation, and we don't have a solution for this one yet. But it's similar to the problem we had with Sentinel Tactics.
Yeah.
This is the same kind of heartbreaking problem of a game that we really like and want to publish, that there's a big chunk of people who really like and want us to keep publishing, but how do we make it viable financially? How do we optimize the business side of it? And so that's what we.
It's a tough puzzle.
Yeah.
And we've had several different ideas, and one of those ideas may come to fruition. Hopefully before too long.
Yeah.
But
one of the things that's cool is that video game is going to exist, which is in that
Yes.
world and things like
Yes.
that, and that will give us some good information and.
I mean, whatever it's end up being decided, we're not going to keep it quiet. Chris and I are chomping at the bit to say this is what's going to happen, because
absolutely.
we both we're biased, but we love the hell out of that game.
So does
and
Maggie.
The issue is that it's a Lovecraft theme, so it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And even though we were the first ones to be like, "Look, you're the cultist, you're the bad guy," then all of a sudden, 12 other games did the same thing, and so we're like, "Whoa, oh."
And this expansion does a lot of different things that would revitalize the game quite a bit. But again, we just need to make sure that we're prepared to do it the right way.
Yeah, one of the things that is a big problem for publishers that have been pretty good at mitigating, but are going to keep learning about is the problem is how many games come out and things getting lost when they come out, and games spiking and selling and then falling off and no one cares about them or buys them anymore after that. We've actually been pretty good at getting around that in the last few years, when a lot of other publishers haven't, just by having our marketing reach plus the quality of games and the way that they go in there. But there still are games that do that, because that's more standard. It's more standard to have a spike and then fall off for games these days. So something like Spirit Island is more rare. But we've kind of figured out ways to kind of get some pretty good evergreen long tail on some products, and we're trying to get better and better and better and better at that all the time and make sure that that's what we're doing.
And that may explain the next 2 games I'm going to ask you about, because there are even more. I heard even less about them. So, and a couple of them are older. Compounded lab notes, which I was told was going to be not even compounded, but a similar universe kind of thing.
So Compounded Lab Notes has gone through I think it's on the 19th build right now. But it is at the best place I've ever had it, and it's because I went back to the first version. And
You went the wrong way
first
around.
version. Yeah, the issue is I had it very simple, and then I was like, well, I want to make it more complex. I want it to feel more like the board game. And then I had a job. I worked for Panda Game Manufacturing for 4.5 years, and I left there because I was running out of time to be creative. So, and every time I go to conventions, which I had to do because I was the marketing manager for them, I would leave a little sad because I want to design games and I didn't have the time anymore. So there was some family stuff that happened, all that. So we left ways. So I left them, and so now I have time. So I'm blowing dust off of all of these projects that I've been wanting to work on. Like there's other science games that I have in the
there's
in the
other
works.
secret Daryl projects that I reminded him of.
Yeah, he's like, what about this? I'm like, oh yeah. So Lab Notes, I actually got the new version done before Gen Con, and I didn't print it, but I can print it, and it's really quick to play. I'm really happy with where it's at because I went back to stage 1, but added a lot more strategy to it as opposed to complexity. So the players themselves are the ones that make it complex based on how they play. So I'm really, really happy with that, and I actually have a great deal of thanks to give to 2 friends of mine, Ben Pitchback and Matt Riddle, because they came out with this awesome game called Fleet Dice, which is the best roll and write I've ever played in my life. If you haven't played it, please go.
It's good.
And get it. But their dice mechanic is what kind of solved one of the big issues I had in Lab Notes.
So that's a long answer to say we don't know.
We don't know.
But we want to do it. We'd really like to do it.
It's still in the development stage.
Yeah.
Going off of that,
Yeah.
next year is the dawn of the 10th anniversary of Compounded, and so we are.
Daryl is working on a new, updated version of Compounded. So we don't know anything besides that, but it's like a thing we want to do.
Yeah.
Is like just of the base Compounded is like. Here's a.
Yeah, so I will say that when that sees the light of day, I wouldn't be surprised if Lab Notes is right there beside it.
Yeah.
Package deal.
Compounded was my third one, so there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
And if you have Compounded, we're not going to ignore them. We're not doing like the pandemic update, where it's like, if you have the old game, screw you have to buy all the new stuff. We're not going to be doing that.
Right.
So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other?
Thank you.
If somebody wants to help you guys run events or do demos, who's the person to talk to?
Hi.
and or Katie.
Yeah, so me and Katie tag team the Citizens program. So if you email citizens@greaterthangames.com, you'll hear from me or Katie about running events or doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Adjacent to that, you have the RPG coming out officially, organized play. You've mentioned you want to try and do it. Is there plans in the works? Are you talking with local game stores to see what they want to do or what they would be up to do?
We've been talking to a lot of stores and various people about the idea of organized play. We definitely want to have some sort of organized play. We don't have a system in place for that yet. That won't be a thing that we'll be doing at launch of the game, but that is one of the things on the stack of Sentinel Comics RPG things that are in process. So
yeah, we like the idea. It's very, very tricky not to crack, given our scale.
Yep.
In addition to that, I would just say that we are also looking at it for other games too. Where we've actively been talking to our retailers about it to try and figure out for our other products what would that look like as well.
Not just RPGs, but also board games, card games.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that what I will say is that increasing the size of the marketing team, especially getting most recently getting Katie to do customer service and also do some scheduling for citizens and things like that. Those sort of steps we've taken in the last 6 months have moved us slightly closer in the direction of it being possible to consider doing it correctly.
Very confident.
Yeah.
Just looking at Greater Than Games, I'm seeing you guys grow, hire new people. One thing just off of what, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names. Daryl said earlier, at Christopher and Adam, how much do you think we're going to be seeing you going forward, especially with Sentinels finished, as game designers and game artists, or versus as some of the founders of Greater Than Games, how much of your time are you maybe having to move into that more management position to oversee stuff versus being able to actually get down into the nitty gritty and be the game designers that kind of launched it?
So something that we've talked about recently is that it is our role being more specific and less general overseer. That we hire people like Jen to oversee the graphic design of things so that we can trust her to do so, and we don't have to worry about that as much.
So one of my goals is actually that Christopher and Adam and Chris can all spend more time being creative and creating cool game stuff, and less time actually doing like generic business management, you know what I mean, like project management or personnel management or stuff like that, because it is much easier to hire someone who is good, and like, not saying that it's easy, and not saying that we've always saw this and it'll be a process, but in principle, right, it's easier to hire someone who is good at organizing things and running a project and stuff like that, even though that might be expensive and complicated, than it is to find someone that, like, the esoteric, like, creativeness, whether it's about, like, generating something like Sentinel Comics or developing games or designing games and stuff like that, is a little bit more esoteric. It's hard to interview for, I guess, is what I mean. So the only way you can find someone who does that is by working with them extensively. And now we've got people who are like, oh, they're good at it. We know that because of years and years of experience.
You can't manufacture our relationship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's also another,
Yeah.
like Christopher and Adam, like, no one else could be Christopher and Adam friends like that, right?
Right.
But like, but I can interview for people that are good at organizing. At least this is in principle true, right? So this is sort of my philosophy that is like imperfectly executed. If that makes sense.
Welcome to reality.
Yeah.
So ideally, we would be more focused on creation as time goes on, and not less.
Yeah, right. Because what you don't want to
more
do,
focus on management.
what you definitely don't want to do, and it's a mistake that happens sometimes, is that people get promoted to their point of incompetence.
Yeah.
Right, this is a classic company thing, where you're like, if you're a software engineer, and you're really good at software engineering, then what people will want to do at you often is keep promoting you into more and more of a managerial role, where you do less and less and less software engineering. For some people, that's great, actually. Some people are good at something like software engineering, but also awesome at managing people. But there are other humans who, it might surprise you to learn, are good at software engineering and terrible at managing people. And if you could promote them to being like the CTO of a company, of a tech company, you're gonna run into problems because they're bad at personnel management, right? Even though they're might be a great software engineer. And so not falling into that trap is also important.
Adam.
Yes.
Have you worked on art on any of your other IPs, or are there any other IPs that you have that you would like to do art for?
Yeah, so Homebrewers, I did the art for.
Deck building, the deck building game.
Deck building, I also did. That's true. There are a couple other IPs that I can't really talk about that I'm very interested in doing art for. And they're drastically different styles, and that's mostly what I'm interested in outside. So I don't want to draw superheroes over and over in something else. I want to kind of branch out. If I'm going to be doing a different genre, I want to do a different style. So that is something that both requires the game to be developed, and for me to spend probably at least a month or so really refining that style before I go and try and do it. But that is something that is a goal. So.
Right. So Andy keeps trying to raise his hand and ask a second question, and I don't know if that's allowed. Because he said he only had one.
Yeah, he
But
did
really,
say he
like,
only had one.
You know what? I'm gonna take. I'll field it. Andy, you got a question?
I only had one prepared. The others have come up while sitting.
Are you asking your question now? Is that your question?
That was a statement.
Are you gonna ask a question?
It seems likely. Okay, so I'll ask the fun one since you're interested. So you all happen to be in St. Louis, or at least Greater Than Games is headquartered there.
That's what I've heard.
What do you think about, or how do you think that St. Louis itself, or the community of other people in the industry there, has helped and or affected your company? Like, what is it about St. Louis that's great or cool or sucky?
Oh man, shipping.
Yeah. So there's a few things that are real cool. This is something I kind of like been real interested in, has sort of evolved and was like half an accident and is now like, oh, that's really kind of cool. So on the shipping and logistics side of things, St. Louis is right in the middle of the country, and we get really inexpensive rates both for inbound and outbound shipping, basically whether that's freight or parcels. And we also get really fast turnarounds on parcels for like a Kickstarter fulfillment or what have you. We can hit almost all of the country in 3 days for 3-day shipping with like FedEx Ground, 4 days for the Pacific Northwest, but that's it. That's the only thing on the 4-day side of things. We also have all but one of the Class 1 railroads in North America come to St. Louis and have terminals in St. Louis. So what does this mean? To learn more, come to the shipping and logistics panel tomorrow that Jody and Matt and I are doing.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
So we'll talk about all sorts of those kind of things, which is interesting. But on the game community side, spontaneously, just very interesting. So industry clusters is an economic concept that happens. And so for example, there's a lot of software companies in San Francisco, right? So that's an industry cluster that sort of, for those reasons, real firm reasons why it happened, but it sort of organically emerged. There's a lot of tabletop board game stuff in Seattle because of Wizards of the Coast and a few other companies that were up there. So that's the biggest industry cluster of tabletop board gaming. But the second might be St. Louis. It's really interesting that has happened. So we're there. Stonemaier Games is there. Genius Games is there. Gray Fox Games is there. Miniature Market is based in St. Louis. GTS Distribution and Southern Hobby Distribution both have big warehouses in St. Louis. There's a number of independent game designers and things that live in St. Louis. So it's very interesting that has happened, and that's a accelerating sort of thing. And so it's a kind of a cool thing. One of the things I think that's contributed to or benefited from that, and I'm not sure which direction the causation arrow goes, is there's a fairly small but very well regarded local convention called Geekway to the West in St. Louis. And so yeah, again, I don't know what the causality arrow looks like on that, but it is a thing that is true. So I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts, but that's fine.
So Geekway to the West has lended itself to creating a stronger design community in the area.
Yeah.
There's a lot of design events that take place at Geekway to the West, and that has kind of built up a stronger community there because of it too. Because they have a thing where I think it's Indie Boards and Cards did it last year, but I'm not sure if they do it every year, where the winner of a design event, they get their game published by that company. So it draws a lot of designers there, which then increases the community in the area in general.
Has that led to a strong customer community in St. Louis? Is this just like a higher rate of board gamers there and more board game store retailers?
So
there are a lot of stores there. There are like more stores than on average, like more stores than in Indianapolis. I'm from Indianapolis originally, so I can definitely say that there are more stores in St. Louis than there are in Indianapolis, although the population is a little bit different between the two too. So
yeah, so it's interesting. It's a little bit like we're a little bit removed from that, answering that question. Like I would tell you, there's way more from my perspective doing sales for Greater Than Games. There's way more customers in St. Louis than most other places. But when I say customers, I mean companies that are buying our stuff. So that's also really nice. Like the big warehouses for Southern Hobby Distribution, GTS Distribution, and then Miniature Market are all in St. Louis. So that's a local delivery. Like you drive it over there a couple miles, right? Which is obviously very cheap for shipping for us. So in that sense, there are like 3 big customers in St. Louis, which is a lot of customers for one city. I'm trying to think if there's any place else that has 3 warehouses that we ship to. There isn't actually in the metro area. I don't think there's another metro area with as many big warehouses that we ship to, which is a very interesting truth. So,
you mentioned on the podcast that you give metal names as the code names for projects.
Right, we've got Project Steel and Project Mithril still in the bucket.
I was wondering like how many different metals you currently have assigned. Just those 2? Or?
Yeah, those are the only 2 that are still active.
We did that originally a bunch and then sort of like kind of stopped.
The trick is, that is true of games that Adam and I have in our bucket, not that Greater Than Games has it in its bucket. Because Chris Burton also has his own system. His system is all project and then, right, it's all like plant destroying bugs.
Parasites.
Yeah, yeah. These are all like plagues.
Yeah.
And
so
we
like,
call everything by its name at Dice AP.
Well, see, the problem is, if you do that, you get attached to a name way too early.
That's
true.
true.
We get attached to a name and we stick with it.
Yeah, you see,
We'll
that's
give
how
it
you
abbreviations. We'll give it abbreviations,
Right.
but the abbreviation is the title.
We try to name things as late in the process as possible, so as to not end up getting attached to a bad name.
Or so that
or either somebody else takes
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Or
So, like,
the name doesn't drive
when
the
I'm
design
starting out quotes
process.
for Medium, I'd use the code name Venti.
Yeah.
Like for Starbucks. And that was kind of what we'd throw around there instead of being like medium, medium.
Wouldn't it be Grande?
Venti.
But that's
No,
what you
because there's short and then when you look at it.
The
I
medium
don't
size
know,
is the
there's so
Grande.
many
She's right.
sizes.
Venti's the
It
biggest.
doesn't make any sense. Why is the medium a grande?
It doesn't make any sense, but it's accurate. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Because it was actually just small and large,
No,
and then they
because you
added
get
a
a
20,
short.
20 ounce, and that's 20, and that's.
You gotta go
You
back
can get
and
a short
rename it.
drink.
Takes me a minute.
We've
That's
talked about
small. If you
coffee a
look at the
lot
size.
in this.
Anyway.
Yeah, we
panel.
really have.
It's amazing.
All right.
So anyway,
Moving on.
so Adam and I still actively have Steel and Mithril, and we have some other ideas that are in some super far back burners. But Steel and Mithril are not things that we need to like get out now, so they will happen someday.
Tolkien Mithril or D&D Mithril?
Both. Neither.
Neither.
Further questions? Andy?
Yeah, so is Chibas going to be an imprint?
That's a really good question. Okay, so with Dice Hate Me, we have Dice Hate Me Studio, which is sort of like imprint. So everything's greater than games branded, but it also says Dice Hate Me Studio on it, and that means that like it's one of the like focus games that Chris is developing and things like that. So that has some meaning there. We talked with James Ernest about cheap ass games as well when that came across, and there's a few things that are true about that. So the short answer is no. Is that because cheap ass games meant something.
That it doesn't mean anymore.
Right, if that makes sense. And in fact,
Because we're going to be making a lot of the old cheap ass games into much nicer ass games.
Exactly.
Yeah, and he did not like
And he
the title
doesn't-
Nice Ass Games. I
Nobody
tried, wasn't sold.
Yeah.
Well, so the other trick is
Or
a lot of these
sweet
games are ones that we are hoping to get into more mass distribution, and there's
Terrific.
one of the problems that that Cheap Ass ran into is there are games that places like Target or Barnes & Noble would potentially be into, and they're like, we're not putting a game on the shelf that says ass on it.
Right.
So instead, they're going to be called nice butt games. That's not true. But anything like that, we could put the James Ernest games.
Right, yeah. So
back.
James Ernest, what he as a game designer designs a game, he's got a logo and a brand, and James Ernest is his brand for him personally. So that will of course go on a box of any game he designs. Like Tack, for example, which has been published by Cheap Ass Games for several years now, doesn't say Cheap Ass Games on it because it's a $55 game, and they thought that was a little bit silly. So you run into problems like that, right? Now, like the free downloads all currently are on cheapassgames.com still of all of their old free download stuff, and to the extent that we have stuff like that around,
Well, because
like that
those
brand
things
still exists.
we're not saying that those things are no longer cheap ass
Right,
games.
exactly.
We're not going to go back and like wash cheap ass games off of all of the old stuff. We're just saying as we're making new things, as
stuff.
we're updating things,
Yeah.
that they
We're gonna have a product that we definitely sell for quite a while that always says Cheap Ass Games on it, which is the book that we kickstarted. The
Right.
Cheap Ass Games in Black and White book. Like that's the title of the book, Cheap Ass Games in Black and White, and that is gonna be branded as Cheap Ass Games, obviously. But yeah, so no asterisk is the answer. That's not good.
All right. Any other questions? Okay.
Galactic Strike Force?
Yeah.
Any love on that?
Yeah, lots of love.
So much love.
We love it. We were big Galactic Strike Force fans.
Is there going to be a digital version of that?
No.
The
economics
Not
of that.
by Jeremy.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. It's
Not
actually
yet.
probably a better way.
So
I mean,
here's the thing with Galactic Strike Force. It's a great game. And we like it a lot, and it came out and didn't do as well as we expected, and our expectations were off actually because the first game that we made was Sentinels of the Multiverse, and the second game we made was Galactic Strike Force, and we're like, wow, Galactic Strike Force didn't do as well as Sentinels of the Multiverse at all. But it actually didn't do poorly. Like it didn't fail.
Right.
It just didn't do as well as Sentinels. So we're like, oh well.
The thing that bit us in the butt about Galactic Strike Force, Galactic Strike Force had that same set, like when you're talking about Fate of the Elder Gods. So
Sold.
Galactic Strike Force and Fate of the Elder Gods, they sell a bunch and then no more. And it's like, so that happened with Galactic Strike Force and Fate of the Elder Gods
And Sentinel Tactics.
And Sentinel Tactics and Laser Riders, unfortunately. That's another game that really had that sales curve to it.
But again, no reflection of that they're bad
Yeah,
games.
exactly.
Right,
Not
right,
at
yeah,
all.
yeah.
They're
By all
really-
means, please buy them.
Yeah, they're really good and people still like them. It's just that they were ones where the oxygen got sucked out of the room right as they released for whatever reason, and they didn't. They had a much more standard sales curve for a good game than some other things. The thing that hurt us about Galactic Strike Force and Sentinel Tactics that did not later on for later games that we published is that we didn't know what we were doing.
We printed too many copies because the first game we ever made was Star Wars
Right,
the Multiverse,
exactly.
and it sold and it sold and it sold. So
Yeah.
then we did Galactic Strike Force, and it was selling, and we're like, oh wow, let's have a nice big print run of that. And then it stopped selling. We're like, wait, why? What?
Oh.
Is
It's
it
never
bad?
happened before,
And it's
right.
not that it's bad. It's that that's actually the standard
That's the
game
standard
model,
kind of curve,
and our
right.
first game ever did not follow the standard.
Exactly. So we always anticipate that is probably what's going to happen with the game that we publish, and then, but as soon as like now we'll get better at reading the signs of is this turning into evergreen or not, and the signs have changed over time too.
Yep.
So Fate of the Elder Gods is a situation where like it looked like it was going to, and they were like, oh yeah, let's do an expansion.
There was hype, there was buzz,
Yeah,
everything was going for
because
it.
it sold so much. That is the thing that frustrates me, but it's because of the state of the market now. Like if Fate of the Elder Gods had come out back in 2012, it would have been taken off.
Yeah,
and been evergreen
it's
for
just
sure.
it's just the nature. With last year with over 5,000 titles that come out,
Yeah.
it's you're gonna see that more commonly than you do,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of good games out there.
A lot of really good
No,
games.
the thing that I'm kind of tentatively seeing, I actually think that's getting reined in a little bit. And it's getting reined in. A lot of the reining it in pressure is coming from the retailers and the distribution
Yeah.
side, where they're like, nope, like, our vendors are our vendors right now. You've got to have something wildly successful first before we will even think about it. And so it means the barrier to entry has been pulled up a little bit, which is
good for the
good for
market.
us.
Right, yeah.
To actually
Anyway.
answer your question, though, we love Galactic Strike Force, and we're not giving up on it as a property, and we hope to do some things with it.
We hope to do some things. Galactic Strike Force is in the same bucket as Project Steel and Project Mithril right now.
Yeah.
Which is when we are not swamped under giant piles of infinite work, which we are right now, that we would like to look at it again in the future.
But like,
I will just put a quick cap on this too. So over the last 4 projects that we've done, we've developed a really keen eye for what kind of a game is going to be successful as a digital adaptation. Specifically, and it has a lot to do with how many copies are in print, how many copies are sold through to consumers, and what its sales curve is,
Yeah.
specifically to what Paul was just talking about.
Jeremy and I have an algorithm.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth, and obviously, I mean, without getting any specific numbers, I think most people in this room understand that Spirit Island has got a curve that is similar to what Sentinel's curve is, and that Sentinel still sells. Sentinel's the video game still sells. There are more than 250,000 copies of Sentinels: The Multiverse Digital sold to this day, and it continues to sell. Galactic Strike Force, as they said when it did that, we licensed it immediately. It's like, oh, we're totally going to do this, and then they were like, whoa. Maybe not just yet.
Yeah.
Because we were ready.
Before you put a ton of work into it.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, I mean, and we at that time we absolutely could have made it. From a budget point of view, we could have very well done it. But part of what makes our business work with their business is the idea of someone who finds Sentinels digitally loves it and then goes and buys Sentinels physically. Or
And
somebody
vice
who buys
versa.
it physically and it's like, oh, I can play this on my phone. And it's about that virtuous cycle of finding something that people love and giving them as many different ways to love it as we possibly can. And when it builds and then fizzles, that becomes a much harder slog to get more people excited and more people to play, quite frankly, even if it's a good game, which again, these all are good games. But it's a question of getting them in front of the right people who want to play it and making that profitable. So.
Yeah, because I just remember in our group when we played it, we've been talking about it, and some people in our group who don't like as many heavy component games were just commenting that it had so many moving parts, but that if you digitalize that, so much of that could just be automated.
Yeah, it's true. But what would be even better is to take that original Galactic Strike Force game, refine it, and make it so the moving parts work even better, and then turn that into a digital game.
Yeah.
Hypothetically speaking.
in
the bucket.
Yeah. So if we do anything with Galactic Strike Force, it will look like that. It will not be for years.
Right. That is very true.
We want to.
1.7 years.
Don't
quote me on that. That's not true at all. I'm not going to be done with RPG stuff in that time.
Questions?
Anything else? Andy has a question.
So recently, the letters page has been moving towards newer things.
Yeah.
And which is exciting. And we've got the writers' room, which I think went really well for the first time.
So do we.
Is there anything more you want to say about what you're looking forward to with the future of it?
So, yeah, definitely. So the Letters Page podcast has been going very well, and even though we have run out of content, which is not true, but
We can't do
format.
full episodes on specific characters anymore.
Right, the format of the show for a long time was, all right, this character, let's tell you everything about that character. This character will tell you everything. Well, we've done that now. We've gone through all the characters. And so rather than be like, let's make up new characters to tell her about, or let's pull things to the sidelines, which is, like, there's been stuff where we've been creating new things live, which is a lot of fun, and we've been adding to backstories and pulling things in and doing additional episodes on characters we've already done episodes on. I think Legacy has had 4 episodes at this point. The Legacy family at least has. And that's all well and good, but we're like, okay, with that stuff being done and us not wanting to yet talk about, like, there's a bunch of RPG stuff that we could essentially do episodes on, but it would all be the episodes would be coming out notably before the RPG comes out, before the supplementals to the RPG come out, and that's too soon. That's the wrong order.
quicker to make a podcast than it is to make an RPG book.
We record for a few hours on Friday. Trevor takes that and makes it into actually something that people anybody wants to listen to, and then we release that thing and people like it. So with that said, we really like the idea. We're trying out this writer's room thing of saying, okay, since we're not going to tell you about all the going forward stuff yet, there's going to be stuff that happens, and we want it to come out in the game form first, and then us to go back and talk about it once people have had a chance to experience it in its intended form. Let's go back. Let's go back to the notable back issues of the world of Sentinel Comics. We started with Freedom 4, number 88, which is from 1950 something or other, and like going back and finding those issues and explaining those issues and building them live like we did, and then doing a cover like Adam did, which was gorgeous, and seeing if we can do that as a format. If that is possible as a format, we would love to be doing like 2 to 3 writers' rooms a month. So the bulk of the episodes would be writers' rooms, and then an editor's note, and then occasionally an episode where it's like, well, we just put out a bunch of information about this thing or this character, so it's time for us to now talk about it on the podcast.
But then that would generate a cycle of we put out an episode, and a couple weeks later we read the questions about the issue in that episode as though it were a letters page in an actual comic.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that like we're finally coming to the point of now we're the actual letters page that we've intended to be all along. So if people are interested in that, and if the listenership is like, yeah, give us these writer room stories with the 2 of us, create a story live, and you can hear our creative process and hear us bicker about nonsensical things like the 4th largest diamond in the world, then and if people like that sort of thing, then great, we've got a podcast.
Yeah. So far the response has been very positive.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people tell us they like it. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the download numbers on it actually ticked up a little bit. So yeah.
You can always do a ship thing too.
Oh yeah.
Ship like guys in Legacy.
We did a whole episode. We did a whole shipping episode last year. It was very popular.
Two episodes.
We actually did. We've done 2 shipping episodes. So new idea, Daryl.
The Sentinel's what if.
It is capable to ship one.
We have an
shipping
entire
episode
book
with
called
another
Inspiration that is the what if thing. So like, next topic. Go.
I like water.
We have water. We had a whole episode on water.
Pause. Andy doesn't have his hand up for once. I was confused.
No, he's got more questions.
Oh.
But does any non-Andy people in here have questions?
Yeah, anyone else want seconds before he gets 8s? There we go.
If Sentinels of Freedom does well, and they were talking about releasing it on Switch. Could you see yourself doing other types of video games in the future using the Sentinels IP?
Potentially.
Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah. We
I've wanted to make a fighting game forever.
Yeah, so wait.
I didn't want to say it outright.
That is certainly possible. If the Sentinel's Freedom game does well, then a next step from that is more chapters for Sentinel's Freedom, because
there's a content roadmap for that game.
Right, where we essentially were like, they were like, what kind of game do you want to make? And we're like, here's the story, and they're like, okay, well, how about that? And we're like, oh, right. Sorry, we're used to this whole crazy 70 years of
playable
comic
characters for this.
Yet. So there's a bunch more stuff that could happen as part of that, and then there are various other game studios that might have ideas for games that they would like to do, not just Candelabra.
Yeah. So basically, like, this kind of goes without saying, but like for you all, but for the wider Sentinels audience, we'll see what people want. So if you like something, and then you buy it, it makes it more likely that more things like that will exist, sort of, which is kind of obvious, but like it's basically true. So like if that does they come out with this kind of video, like a video game that is not based on the on a specific board game, and it does well, then it makes it more likely that that will exist, right? The same way as if there were magically comic books and they sold really well, that would mean there would be more comic books. If there was magically like a movie and a bunch of people went to go see the movie, But other people want to go see the movie, then, it may well. So is that kind of like, kind of goes without saying, but it's definitely true. Like, definitely will have that effect, So.
Did you have a question?
Sort of. Would you ever consider getting, I'm also blanking on his name, the designer of Spirit Island on the letters page to maybe do a letters page series about the spirits?
Yes, but it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
He's not interested in it.
He's not interested.
Yeah, so we were like, Eric, we're gonna do all these things. He's like, cool, but no. We're like, all right. we are the people that we are, and Eric is the person that he is.
We actually
and that's
wanted
right.
that lore to be more tied to Sentinels than, considerably more than it is.
And he was like,
and
no.
he was like, he's not
And that's fine.
But it's
totally
like,
his world. So
like something that is really true that we found to be very true that I appreciate and like is that if there is an extensive IP that someone has poured a lot of themselves into and is really, really cool, that letting them control it and building something out of that, like it's a really good basis for a product, basically.
Right. So like Eric's what way of communicating the lore and stuff of Spirit Island is solely within Spirit Island, whereas Adam and I have a bunch of goals and hopes of various multimedia things within the world of Sentinel Comics.
So the Nexus of the Void, the Spirit Island in Sentinels is
It's a one-way street.
It's apocryphal to Spirit Island's lore.
Yes.
So
You had a question.
It's kind of related to the podcast because you mentioned in the past that there are things that you wish people would either vote on with the Patreon or
Yeah.
talk about. Are there
Right.
certain things beyond the letters or the writer's room? Are there either certain topics that you would hope are brought up in some ways or things that you haven't thought of? There are things you want to talk about but haven't
Are you
actually
asking us if there's things that we haven't thought of yet? And the answer is yes, but I can't think of them.
Are there things that you would like to talk about that you are holding off of because it's not been put out there and you're not really sure how to phrase it?
No, because we cheat all the time. Where there'll be like a topic that we really want to talk about and nobody's been submitting it. We're like, man, Adam, wow, candidly, wouldn't it be nice, here I am on the air saying to you, to talk about a topic like this? Gosh, I wish somebody would suggest it.
Nobody
No,
suggested
that's
it, so
true.
we can never talk about it.
All right, let's move on. And then someone suggests it,
Yeah.
and then we talk about it. It's great. That said, there are, unfortunately, one of the reasons that that we were like, we need to do something, and so we came up with the idea of these writers' rooms, which are great, and I love them, was there was a lot of topics being suggested that were like, we're not ready to talk about that yet. People are like, what's Citizen Dawn doing in the RPG? And we're like, nope. And then be like,
or such things that are getting way too specific.
right, or
like-
what's the deal with Zatulish? You'll learn the deal with Zatulish. We're not going to talk about that yet. Or like, what is this one character's favorite type of specifically blueberry pie? There's lots of types of blueberry pie. What's this one character's favorite type of blueberry pie? And we're like, okay, that's not an
can't submit
episode.
that
Like,
as an
we'll
episode.
we'll
You
answer
can.
that question, but that's not an episode.
Right.
And so,
or like a lot of them were starting to be like, tell me about this single issue.
right.
So-
And that was like, tell me this story. Tell me this story. Tell me this story. Like, okay, all right. So that's where we came up with the writers' room, and so we're gonna do that thing. Hopefully, and that's gonna work out. But so yeah, but there's not like a man. I really wish somebody would ask about blank, because then we just see the pot when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I would feel bad about being so manipulative. We also weren't so obvious about it.
Right. Everybody talks about it. I mean, like everybody's getting what they want out of this. I feel like it's better for me. It's better for you. It's better for them.
Yeah.
What movie is that a reference to? Goodness?
When I say it's better for me, it's better for you, it's better for them. It's a reference to a movie.
Nice. It's a quiz question. All right, next question.
We all know.
How tired are you of getting questions about Sentinels of Earth Prime?
I mean, it used to be a little bit more frustrating because there were things that were on my plate that I had to finish up and get to Green Ronin. And people were like, when's it going to be done? I'm like, I'm doing so much right now. But it was fine. And then I got all that done and I gave it all to Green Ronin. And now when people are like, when is it coming? I'm like, I have no idea, nor control. And it's fine. Like, it'll come out when it comes out, and I'm excited for people to play it when it does. And until then, I'm working on RPGs and writing the Sentinels of Freedom video game. I'm good.
Well, and I can tell you too, because I actually had a meeting with Chris Pramus earlier today. They are 100% transparent about what's going on.
Yeah, and
they're waiting on artwork. That's it.
Yeah,
and
I've
like
heard
the
that
design
from
is
somebody,
completely
yeah.
done and everything else. So like, it's not like here's what we're gonna tell everyone publicly, and then like are talking to our partners like, really this other stuff is screwed up. No, that's exactly what it is. They're using a slightly different artwork process than they have before, and it hit some snags that they weren't expecting.
Well, and part of the
That
problem
happens all the time. Like Spirit Island had
Yeah.
that same thing.
Part of the problem for them, and this is not their fault, because what we have is something that is specific and unique, is that like when I'm writing a hero deck, is how you write a hero deck in Sentinels of the Multiverse. I'm like, hey Adam, I'm writing this hero deck, and he goes, oh, you're gonna do art. Yeah, there we go.
Sorry.
And so we're doing these things together, and the art affects the writing, and the writing affects the art. Whereas with Sentinels of Earth Prime, they gave me, these are the characters. I'm like, excellent, I will write them entirely. And as I was doing the process, I was expecting this thing, not in terms of it affecting me, but I'm like, I know they're gonna wanna start on art. So as I was doing things, like, hey guys, these are some of the kinds of cards I'm doing. I'm not 100% certain on exactly how this mechanic's gonna resolve, but there's gonna be a card where this one character does a thing and deals at least 3, but probably multiple targets, some damage. So you might wanna do an art of that. And they're like, okay, good to know. We'll take that into consideration once all the game's done. I'm like, oh, okay, sure, but you can start now. And they're like, well, we want to wait. And then sure enough, after I do everything and deliver all the stuff to them, then like, now we have everything, and we begin the art process. And for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, that takes forever, because we are used to doing the
Most people are not prepared for the volume of art in a game like Sentinels.
Yeah.
And
including us.
Nor should they.
I was going to say, we are also not prepared
Right.
for volume of art.
Yeah.
But we do it anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, it'll take how long it takes.
Well, a follow on to that, any word from Green Ronin about wanting to do more? in Sentinels?
No, they're the very like publicly and specifically it's going to be the game comes out and how does it do? Because if they put
The
it
thing
out
I
and it
said
doesn't
before, it applies to this as well.
right, 'cause, like if it doesn't do well, then why would they want more? But if it does really well,
They would
they will want more. So
yeah.
So if you want the thing, yes.
So maybe it's just me, but I think that a lot of the characters in the Sentinels game are weaker or stronger than some of the others. And you do that like on purpose, or is that just kind of?
I don't think any characters are weaker or stronger. They're just different.
I would put that up to playstyle. That certain groups would be like, oh man, such and such character is the strongest, and it tends to be the like the style of the players at the table, and the different characters are gonna resonate with different players in different ways.
Well, and different challenges are going to be easier to overcome with different characters too.
But I'm going to say the thing that I say all the time, and people are like, man, that is such nonsense. But the video game has proven it to me, which is any set of heroes can beat any villain in any environment. It is possible. So, and if you don't believe me, ask Luke Dolphin. Has he done the whole thing?
He's done a number of them, but the video game actually does feed directly into the Sentinel Statistics project.
Yeah.
So every game that's been played in the video, you can go and look and see how what teams have played against what villains and at what win rate or whatever. And I don't think there's a single matchup that is like, nope, this has never been won.
It's impossible. Yeah.
And actually, I shouldn't say that. There are over 10 to like the 12th possible combination. So we haven't done every single combination.
Right.
But everyone that has been tried has been won by somebody.
Right.
Do you publish those statistics?
They are.
Yeah, just Google search the Sentinel Statistics Project, and you'll find it.
The trick, a lot of people say, oh, and you can look here on the Sentinel Statistics Project that these heroes are stronger, these heroes are weaker. But all the data is super skewed because there's a lot of data that comes in from the heroes that people play when they're learning the game, and so the win-loss ratio there versus the heroes that people play when they know the game better, and the win-loss ratio there. So I would not. When the people say, oh, according to this project, this is the strongest hero and this is the weakest hero. I think
Well, I mean, that's the deal with statistics. Also, there's a lot of ways to interpret the same set of numbers.
Right. So.
On that point, actually, does it pick up the stats if someone gets through the game? Is like, oh, this is going terrible, then just close the gap.
Yeah, that counts as a loss, I think.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know this specifically because John on my team is the one who actually does this specifically what report is being tracked and what is being fed in. But yes, we definitely have other analytics on dropped games, which are not specifically into the statistics project. So
Okay.
we can tell you that something like, a third of games don't get past the second or third round because some people are like, oh, they take a really bad hit from the villain because that's what happens in Sentinels. The first round, the villain beats the crap out of you for a little bit until you get your stuff together. And so some people, especially when they're new to the game, they don't get that. And they're like, oh, this is tough. And then they just quit and start another one until they have a good start. So we do have analytics on a lot of that stuff, but we haven't done a lot of serious data analysis of it. Mainly just because nothing has jumped out that's like, oh, here's a huge problem that we should probably look at, just because the game is really well designed.
So
it turns out.
My favorite thing about the Sentinel Statistics Project is that because it exists, we now have the Letters Page podcast, which contains lies and damn lies, and then the Sentinel Statistics Project, which contains statistics. So that really covers all of our bases.
Yeah. If you need a lie, we got you.
Yeah, lies and damn lies.
We have lies and damn lies.
And the statistics are right over there,
We
all
have
about
just
Sentinel.
so many of those.
Yeah.
Your favorite line?
It's our favorite.
It's definitely my name, right? You do it a
That's
lot.
very pedestrian. My favorite line.
Is it the one where everybody dies?
That's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one.
Where everything's just perfectly fine.
So I'm going to give you my favorite lie, but my answer here is a lie. But I thought, man, the best answer for me to give that question is if somebody says, give me your favorite lie, and I say, the fact that I don't have a favorite hero. That's the best response. Because people are like, oh, he does have a favorite hero, but it's a lie, I don't have a favorite hero. But so, there you go. It's a lie about a lie. Okay, are we good here?
All right.
Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah, oh, I got one.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, Andy.
Okay. Don't let me go longer than you want to go.
No, we're good.
Okay. This might be mostly for Chris Kirkman.
Skate. I got
Yeah,
it.
We got
All right. So I think university mostly, maybe a lot of you do, but talks to people who are pitching games, that sort of thing, right? So I'm kind of interested in the state of how many people are pitching games, and I imagine that you have an idea of like how much over the years people have been pitching games to you. Is that going up and down, that sort of thing? And one way to look at that is, oh well, there's just lots more game designers out there. Another one is, well, we're a place people want to pitch to. So it's kind of two questions that are related to each other. It's like, how much has that been changing over time? People wanting to pitch to you, and what do you ascribe? Is that the word? Like the changes.
Interestingly enough, the amount of pitches that I have personally received has gone down. And that's because we have been more selective in what we are looking for, and people know that. They know preferences, or they know availability of being published. They know that we have certain things in production right now. We have a production window that extends out to 2023 and beyond. And so anything new that comes on board is going to be further down the line. A lot of designers are perfectly fine and patient with that, but some of them are going and just pitching as quickly as they can to get their products out because they want to. They're what I call sustenance designers. So designers that actually rely on a portion of their proceeds from royalties just to sustain themselves.
To pay their bills.
To pay their bills.
Yeah. Right.
Now, not fully pay their bills. There's only a few full-time designers in the industry that they can count on from that. But typically what happens is, in the beginning when we merged, there were a lot of pitches. We took a lot of pitches. We want to kind of see what was out there and see what was going. And the more ingrained you get into the design community, the more the design community, at least the core of the design community, understands kind of who you are as a company. And also, I tend to be involved with Unpub, the Unpublished Network, Unpublished Games Network. And so I'm very ingrained with the design community there. And so I go, and I'm much more of an organic type of recruiter. So I go and I listen to people, and I listen to what people are talking about. I am in that community. And so the organic portion of that is that I find them more than I take the ones that are brought to me. And that's different for any different company. It's just kind of what I prefer, and it's one of the reasons why we have Medium. I'm at Origins last year. Nathan and Danielle were there, just testing out Medium, and all of a sudden I just hear high-fiving and cheering in the back of the room, and I'm like, oh, what is this? And my buddy Dan and Dan Patrice and Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle were up there playing it, and of course if they're playing it, I'm going to go check out what they're doing. And we sat down, we played, and within the first 2 rounds, I was like, we need to do this game.
Yeah.
So those types of more organic, and getting to know people in the design community, also it fosters a better relationship that way. And that's not to say we don't take individual pitches, because I've had several while I've been here. You've had
I was going to
pitches.
say, you've had several. Maggie, did you take any pitches? I didn't know if sometimes you
I
did.
set him up with pitches. I actually didn't have time to take pitches.
But I know you guys did it. I've only had 4 this show. I have 1 more that's coming up, so I'll have 4 in total this show. But I was just looking at Chris's schedule. Chris has had 1, 2, Chris Burton, who is not here. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pitches.
Whoa! Okay, well there you go. Those are the ones that were scheduled.
Right, scheduled, and I'm sure he might have had some ones that aren't scheduled.
No, it took too long.
So even though you're seeing the number of pitches going down, I wonder if we are, as a company, still.
Oh, and that's actually a very good point too.
Because
we
there's
have more
more
people. There's more of a portal that's going through, and I'm involved with more than taking pitches. I'm sitting down and talking about connections. We're having business meetings.
Right.
Yeah.
Things like that.
I was just gonna say, so I work with Chris Burton, our game development manager, a lot. So if something comes into our email, something comes into us, and I think it's an interesting game, I pass it on to him to set up some meetings and things like that. Or if I'm at a convention that he's not at, which happens a lot because I go to all of our shows currently, I'll take some pitches. So over the last year or so, I've taken more pitches than I've ever taken in my life because I never took them before. But we probably take, at a given show, I'd probably take somewhere between 5 to 10 pitches just to see what's out there, because it's a different, it's different for me because I've never done it before. So I want to see what exists.
Right.
But also, a lot of the times we're traveling to different areas. So like UK Games Expo, I made sure that I took a lot because those are international designers that I'm not going to be able to see somewhere else. I'm not going to be able to physically touch their game somewhere else.
And there's a couple of really good ones this year.
Yeah, we saw like several very decent designs, and I talked to them about setting up some seminars and doing some things like that so that we can help further the design community in the UK, which happens to just be an international one because it's a pretty big show. So it's
creating a game, setting up design seminars.
So we're gonna help them set some stuff
UK Games
up.
Expo would set it up.
Yeah, UK Games Expo is
It would
in
be
charge
them
of it.
running it and stuff. They just want to be like help out.
We're gonna give them some feedback and also probably participate. Me, Jen, and Paul have already talked to them about it. I didn't get to talk to you about it yet.
Sure.
We came into here.
Why is it sure?
And Greater the Games might work with a little organization called Unpub to put some stuff together.
Yeah.
A little organization.
Little bit, just a little.
And we still.
Just to go.
Chris Kirkman still regularly attends like Protospiels, right?
Well, never Protospiels, but I'm not saying I won't. But it's always Unpub or a local mini, or I'm visiting somewhere and they have a design group. You know, our design community in the area that I live in is very vibrant. You talked about industry pockets. We've got one of those in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area. Tons and tons of designers in that area. We have weekly meetings where we get together, do play testing, development work, things like that. So in a lot of it's that networking, and it goes back to also the show dependent. Like I took way more pitches at Origins than I did here, simply because Origins is more open to my schedule, and then I'm in the Unpub room doing development work, but then people who are in the Unpub room can approach me and say, here's a sell sheet, let me talk to you about this game. So yeah,
and like Metatopia, I mean like Unpub, I go to Metatopia every year, which is another show that people bring a lot of games to pitch at. So
we're working on making sure now that now that we've got multiple people that are sometimes hearing pitches, that we're all like, let's all, if one person thinks a game is good, great, we're not going to do it, but then we'll all play it and think about it. So that worked really, really well with Medium, which I wanted to do. So Chris saw Medium at Origins and Maggie saw it at Origins. Right, because you showed it to Maggie.
Oh yeah, he immediately found me. He found me at like.
You found Origins, you showed it to Maggie. Yes. Then they played it. Then they brought it to the office, and we all played it. And I'm like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then we did a thing at Gen Con last year.
Yeah. And so that was a good kind of process. And so also to mention something.
I think everyone in the office played that before.
Exactly, before we said yes for sure, which was great for it being that in. But also, you'll notice that Chris said that we've got a production timeline out to 2023, and so when we're taking pitches, your game's going to come out in 2023 or after, not now. Right. Medium came out really fast.
Medium came fast, but we fast-tracked it for a reason.
Right. We fast-tracked it. Also, it's a very small game comparatively to the other stuff we're working on. So we're like, we can actually turn this around internally much quickly.
Yeah. What's required to produce it is
right. And now that we did that, I'm sort of post hoc thinking about that process and realizing there was some upsides and some downsides of that. But really, the reason why it made some sense to do that, and now I want to formalize and structuralize this, is because we really have to think about it in terms of different kinds of games, which is something I mentioned before, different weights of games. So you've got your big massive games which take forever to develop, Spirit Island-esque timelines, then you've got your mid-weight games, and then you've got your mass market appeal kind of games. And across the board, the queue that is the shortest for us is those mass market appeal games right now, because we're just tiptoeing into them. And if Medium goes well for us, we'll want to fill out that queue too, And then we will, and then that will also be filled up until 2023, and that's
But games in the timeline may shuffle around because production is a huge factor. So if you have a game with miniatures, you're adding at least 6 months on production time.
Yeah.
Right off the gate, not counting anything else.
Whereas just a pack of cards and tokens.
Cards is
exactly.
boom, here it is a month later.
Yeah.
So anything like that, if it's so production is a huge deal.
And to answer a question that you may well ask as a result of this, why does it add 6 months if you're going to have miniatures? And I'll tell you, it's really, really cool. The reason why is because the process of doing the tooling is incredibly labor-intensive and skilled labor-intensive. So I was in April in a factory in China where they do this and they make the tooling, and the number of steps you have to go from I have a thing that a sculptor made, or like 3D
A
printed
digital
out,
file,
right?
right, yeah.
And winding up with now I have the steel tool necessary to make a bunch of things is very, very expensive. And the reason why is because the steel tool that can make many, many, many plastic things is going to make positives, so it has to be a negative, right? The negative steel. Then the negative steel though is cast, right? So it has to be cast in something that is that can like handle molten steel, right?
Casting steel is so
right. You got
difficult.
to like pour molten steel into something, and that will burn most things. So it has to be ceramic, a certain kind of like ceramics, high quality ceramics for casting steel. Well, because you want a steel negative, that's got to be a ceramic positive, right? Well, how do you get the ceramic positive? So the ceramic positive in this like high temperature ceramic is cast in a negative that is usually like a ceramic slurry, because it'll harden and have to be baked, has to be put into like a silicone negative, right? How do you get the silicone negative? The silicone negative is going to come from some sort of positive. You might think, well, that's the original sculpt right there. It can't be. Because if it's a sculpt, especially if it's a sculpt, maybe you can do it if it's 3D printed, but if it's a sculpt in a
like Fate was all clay, they were all
the
handmade.
clay. You can't use that because if you mess it up and break it one time, everything
It's
is
gone
ruined
forever.
right? So then, if it's a physical thing, you've got to have 2 more steps to be able to generate an arbitrarily large number of those initial positives, which have to come from a negative, which have to come from the initial positive.
And this doesn't account for all the times where it's like in Sleepy Hollow, like, oh, the bow is too thick.
Yeah.
Back to square one. Start all over again.
Because literally any of those steps, you can learn that it is impossible to do with whatever that step is.
Yeah.
So it might be impossible to do in silicone, and then it might be impossible to do in ceramic, and then it might be impossible to do in steel because of whatever, and then it might be impossible. Like you can get all the way to a steel mold, but then your hard plastic that you're trying to cast is stuck in there forever.
And then there's about 8 different types of plastics you can use.
Yeah, so there's
And
hard
you have to
plastic.
figure out which
soft
plastic's the
yeah.
right one for the size of the mini and the fragility of the mini and blah 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 blah. It's
And
just
then,
yes,
on top of that, if you have a complicated mini, say like Fate of the Other Gods, the Cthulhu piece, that's multiple pieces.
Multiple pieces,
Someone by
yeah.
hand is assembling every single one of those.
Even the smaller ones, like in Legends of Sleepy Hollow,
Yeah.
like Emily is 4 pieces.
Yeah.
It has to be glued together.
But if they did their job, you won't be able to tell that.
Exactly. You can't. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Bye, John.
Anyway, we should probably
Let's wrap
up
up.
now.
Any last second questions? Yes.
Is website going to change at some
Yes.
point?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. The website is going to change at some point.
Why are you looking at me?
This is the bane of me and
Feels like I brought on
Jen's
this contract like years ago.
Yes.
What's your overhead on
Yeah, let's
whiteboards
talk about
looking like
website
for your
then.
Sentinels ideas?
Oh, man, our whiteboards.
Yeah.
Our whiteboards are pretty clean right now because we just did a big info dump into the spreadsheets.
Yeah.
We just recently took a ton of information and put them into spreadsheets.
Most of them just got erased, and
Yeah.
so like, there's just a couple notes on there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's
I
pretty
didn't know
good.
if you were just like renting out a warehouse to store all of them so you could pull them out later.
No, we did
that's
spreadsheets
good.
instead because we were about to do that.
Well, yeah, every time, most of the time we fill up a whiteboard, we just throw it out after.
Yeah.
yeah.
You throw away the- we don't
yeah,
keep
get
it.
a new
It's just
one.
because erasing is just such a pain.
Yeah, so we do have a big stock.
If I'm paid enough, next time I'm there, I'll take pictures and tweet them.
I'm thinking about both the Symbols of Freedom and the RPG. If both turn out equally successful and sustainable,
Yeah.
are they going to have similar story threads, right? Are they going to go completely different ways?
So the stories will will acknowledge each other.
Share continuity.
But the idea is that like the story that you play, because we're doing a one shot adventure that is for the RPG that is a preview that leads into the story in the video game, and the story in the video game will like be happening in the same world as the RPG. But since we are the creators of all of that stuff, we're not worried about like, oh no, these people are tromping over each other's stories. Like, nah, it's all goes in the world.
Just like how Sentinels of the Multiverse has its own timeline and there's numbers on everything and everything goes in a certain order.
You have done it again.
We've done it again.
Yeah, we
It's-
have a new spreadsheet.
Yeah.
That is all the future stuff.
Yeah,
And
but we
it's-
have the foresight to make the spreadsheet first.
First, oh, that's great. Yes.
Did you look at my spreadsheet and how accurate is it?
I looked at your spreadsheet and I started reading through it and I went, I am going to have a time in which I open your spreadsheet in one window and my spreadsheet on my other monitor and look through everything. And that will take me a large amount of time. And no, I'm not sharing my spreadsheet with you. Yet. I might do it someday.
Someday. We'll see.
I can be convinced. All right.
All right, we can wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.